Today's guest at the Rock House is none other than Rudy Sarzo. Rudy is considered as the top echelon of all bass players when it comes to the world of heavy metal. When you think of the big four, most people think of Metallica and so forth, but I always think of the top four bass players being Ian Hill. I've forgotten now, mate. Ian Hill.
How you
Geezer,
doing? It's funny
Geezer,
because
Geezer Butler and Steve
uh,
Harris. And the top four is you, Rudy. How are you, mate?
you know what? I'm not even in my own top four. I'm not even in my own top 100. So
So
thank you. That's
who's in
very
your top
kind of
four?
you.
Who
I
is in your
mean,
top?
well, chronologically in inspiration,
Yeah,
because this is what I grew up listening to. I would say McCartney, because that opened the door for me to really understand the
yeah,
new function of the bass guitar in pop music, uh, which is interesting because he, uh, from interviews that I read, he was influenced by James Jamerson, who was actually a jazz bass
yeah,
player,
yeah, yeah.
part of the Funk Brothers. And of course, I'm talking about the 60s. So my influence was whatever was on the radio. And and since he was part of the Funk Brothers, I could hear him in more different acts than just McCartney, because McCartney was just I could hear him with the Beatles, so I had to wait for a new Beatles song to come
Yeah.
out to hear whatever he was going to come up with. But James Jimerson, and as a matter of fact, back in the day, we did not know who the band was. The Funk Brothers. We knew that it was the Supremes or the Temptations or Smokey Robinson or whatever, but not who was playing on those records. So it was more like, well, it kind of sounds like the same guy because it's same choice of notes, but it's a different band. And then, of course, you have the Wrecking Crew, with mostly well known for Carol Kay
Yep.
on bass, and that was I didn't know, is she a male or female. I don't care. The bass doesn't care if you're a male or female. It just wants to be played.
It,
Notes are notes. And it's the choice of notes. But then again, Carol Kay, another jazz player. As a matter of fact, before she became a bass session player, she was a bebop guitar player. So she brought a lot of that knowledge of musical harmonization theory, and all of that into what she came up with whatever she was allowed to come up with.
yeah,
Make some musical suggestions here and there, because a lot of these guys, they just played whatever was on the music sheet. Or in the case of the Funk Brothers, James Jemerson, I think it was pretty much left to come. There was chord charts, but come up with your own groove, and it was always spectacular. And then you have, as far as rock, because I started going out to rock concerts, there were two
yeah.
guys that really inspired me. In again, chronologically, one would be Tim Bogart from the Vanilla Fudge, and then Cactus, and
Okay.
then the other one, of course, John Entwistle, who impressed me the first time I heard it. My generation, I knew that was a bass guitar. I knew that was not a guitar
The John,
solo.
it was
you
John
know,
who? John who?
yeah,
Anyway, bad joke.
yeah,
Bad joke.
John Entwistle. And then of course, after that, it's you're gonna have all of the Jack Bruce and John Paul Jones, Chris Squire, and they're all equally important to me because they're like steps on a stairway. You can't, you go from one great
Yeah.
bass player to
Yeah.
another one, and they all lead you somewhere.
Wow. You've named some great bass players there, mate. Um, you were born and raised
You
in
know,
Cuba. What drew you into
I
music?
I I was born in Cuba, and I was born in 1950, so this is pre-rock and roll.
Yeah.
And we used to get a lot of the same music because there was, this is pre-revolution, so we had a lot of artists from the United States performing there. And so we had like the early rockers, but they were always, and after watching documentaries about it, American-made documentaries, it seemed like the 50s rock and rollers were taking more kind of like a fad or some kind of oddity, a passing phase.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that kids, once they grew up, they were going to outgrow rock and roll, you know. And to me, what really solidified it was the British invasion, just because the United States government could not control it. It was coming from somewhere else. And they realized all suddenly that this was generating a lot of money for the economy. Kids started buying records, 45s, attending shows, buying merchandise. And
Yeah.
it wasn't just the Beatles, it was the whole invasion, you know. So, anyways, getting back to my Cuban musical roots, I grew up mostly without realizing what I was listening to because it was the local music, Latin jazz.
Okay.
Latin jazz, you know, Dizzy Gillespie type of Latin jazz, which was jazz with percussion, you
Wow.
know, and it was very popular. And in our own version of swing bands, which is, you know, you have an orchestra,
Yeah.
but with more Afro-Cuban rhythms. And always
Nice.
the role of the bass player was a little bit different. We had the father of the mambo, Cachao. You know, he brought in that bass playing that is just kind of like give it a danceable beat. Because remember, back in the day, Cuban bands did not have drummers, so the beat, the groove had to be provided by the bass
Nice.
instrument.
Yeah.
You know, or you would have like separate percussion
Wow.
performers. You have
Wow.
conga players, bongos. You would have timbales,
Yep.
but no kick drum, no big, you know, defining, you know, the beats, you know. And you have the clave, which was that little instrument, it's like a little piece of wood, almost like the bunt of a drumstick, and you beat, you know, like one with the other, and you get like a really
Nice.
clicky sound to it, you know. And that would kind of like conduct the band, you know. And so yeah, I grew up with that, and through the years, I've been trying to really define what is the sound in my head. And now, thanks to information on YouTube and so many uh, teachers, you know, uh, giving you all this, you know, passing on their knowledge, you know, I'm able now to really identify what is that I grew up with, you
Nice.
know,
Nice.
harmonically, how to identify it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Beautiful story there, Rudy. You moved over to LA, and in the late 70s, you met a guy by the name of Kevin DeBrow. DeBrow at the
Mhm.
time, one of the major players in Quiet Riot. How did you meet Kevin?
Yeah. Well, I saw the band Quiet Riot perform live when I had just arrived in LA. 70 would have been 76.
So, yeah.
No, 77, because I joined the band in 78.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, back in the day, you had to go out every night. If you made the effort to move to Hollywood, West Hollywood, that LA area where the Sunset Strip is, and you have like the whiskey and the Starwood down the street and the Troubadour down the street, but the whiskey was kind of like the main, you know,
Yes.
right there, the main intersection, you know, and on the Sunset Strip, and then you have the Rainbow and the Roxy and Gazzari's and all of that. So that was kind of like where all the musicians hung out. And so I went to actually to see Van Halen playing at the
Nice.
Whiskey, but it was sold out. It was sold out. So I turned around and just walked down the street and headed into the Starwood. And I walked in, and there was this band playing, and I was really impressed by their arena style presentation in a club. And I thought, you know, by then I had been traveling all over the US playing in clubs, you know, with different bands aspiring to get a record deal. So I've seen a lot. I've seen what's out there, the competition basically. And I saw these guys and I go, wow, these guys are almost there. They got everything together, and they if they just keep going and getting better, better meaning better songs because you can always write a better song. I mean, the Beatles did not stop at She Loves You. They went on to write I Am the Walrus and everything else after
Yellows.
that. It just kept getting better, it kept expanding, it kept getting deeper within themselves. And so I figured, sooner or later, these guys are going to make it. They are that good. They have a vision. You got to have a vision, you know, and I don't know how many bands have visions anymore because back in the day, one thing begot the other. Meaning, like, for example, if you're living in LA, a lot of bands come through here, which means that there's an opportunity to go and catch them live. That's where you're going to learn the most from a band that really inspires you. Catch them play live, everything. What they smell like. You can smell it from the audience. And do they smell like,
Yeah,
are they confident when they get up on stage? I mean, their presentation, how did they captivate you and the audience and all of that, all those elements only come alive when you go and see a band perform.
that's right.
Not on TV, not sitting on your couch. You gotta be there. You gotta feel the frequencies. You got it's it's the gathering of the tribes. If you go to a U2 concert in a stadium, the band sends out a vibration, a frequency that obviously you pay all this money and you make all these sacrifices to get to this place to experience that frequency that not only is the band putting it out, but everybody else in that stadium is going to be in tune to that frequency. You're going to feel it. You're going to be reverberating with it, and that creates one massive energy, right? That's what you are not going to get that sitting on your couch watching it
No,
on TV. It's passive. It's a
no.
passive experience, you know. And so I saw that, in a very small place. Quiet Riot had a very interactive experience. The crowd was into it because the band was putting it out and sending it out there. I mean, it took me then, I just just to get back to meeting Kevin, I watched the show. I was very impressed. Of course, Randy Rhoads was the major reason was I was impressed. I say, wow, this guy's different. I mean, he's reaching out for stuff musically. He's taking chances live because I could hear it that he was like some things, he might be one note away from what he had in mind, but he took that chance, and that to me is more important than anything else. And it wasn't because he was making mistakes. He just knew what he was doing. And I learned that once I started playing in the band. He knew what he was doing, but he wasn't. He wanted to see if this thing that he came up with in his head was going to work
Wow.
in a three piece guitar, guitar, drums and bass situation. You don't have, if you're soloing, you don't have somebody comping behind you to fill in that gap harmonically, right? You got a bass that's just one note defining where you're going within the tone center. But if somebody's comping from you, they can put in extensions on the chords, and what you play on top of that will make sense because it's supported at the bottom. There's no support in a three-piece band. And so Randy was, trying to fit what he knew, his education as a musician, as a classically trained musician. Background, his family were all music teachers, and they own a music school, Musonia, which is still around. It's in North Hollywood. It's in
Wow.
North Hollywood, California, outside in the LA area in the valley. And his family, and so he grew up in academia. He knew how to read music. He started playing acoustic guitar even before he started playing electric. So of all the musicians I ever got to play with, after I met Kevin, I introduced myself. I told him, hey, you guys are great. Just keep doing what you're doing. And then I just moved on. About a year later, they were looking for a bass player and they had not found the right guy. They were looking for, at that time, less of a pick player and more of a finger player. They wanted somebody like a John Deacon, early John Deacon before he started playing with a pick, you know, that was playing with their fingers. So a lot of the bass players in LA were more pick oriented. So I was one of those anomalies. So I auditioned and I got the gig. So going back to Randy's education, of all the guitar players that I've ever played with, he was the first one that showed me what integrity and musical integrity can really achieve. That's what really makes you a musician. Randy was not really interested in being a rock star. He became a rock star with Ozzy. Won the Guitar Player magazine new best guitar player, and you figure, I know guys, great musicians who, when they reach a certain height, at
That's it.
least momentarily, once they reach that, yeah, that's it. It's like, okay, I'm done. I'm here. This is
Yeah,
it. I've made it. That was not the case with Randy. I mean, I know a few of them that after they reach that and they lay back, they decide, oh boy, everybody is not only caught up to me, but it's surpassing me. And there is a bit of competition. There's competition, really is. There's competition. The music business is competitive. Music in itself, by nature, it's not competitive because it's an art form. So you be the best you can be. But once it comes to selling records and putting butts in seats, that's where the competition. Maybe the best that you can be is not good enough. You got to go beyond that to really to get the attention of the record company, to get the attention of the audience, radio, any of those formats that really attract somebody to you and focuses on you rather than focusing on these other guys. So
yeah,
you're competing for that, right? Okay. So Randy was not really interested in that. He was interested in becoming, on getting his doctors in music because he was a musician. So here he is playing with Ozzy, and he gives Ozzy and Sharon notice that he was going to leave the band to go back to school, get his degree, and do some sessions in New York just to keep playing because he loves playing. That's what gets him out of bed. That's his oxygen. You know, and I'm watching this, and I got to tell you, I play with two Randy Rhoads. I play with the Quiet Riot Randy Rhoads, and I play with the Ozzy Osbourne Randy
yep,
Rhoads.
yep.
And I got to tell you, once Ozzy unleashed on him freedom to be himself and to compose what was in here, not composing music that we in Quiet Riot felt that this is what the record companies wanted to hear. No, Ozzy already had a record deal. So it's okay, let's make music here. And that's where Randy became the Randy Rhoads that everybody knows, from playing with Ozzy Osbourne, being and composing all those incredible records, classics. And so I learned a lot. I learned, and I not only did I learn it, I practice it. The value of integrity in whatever your art form happens to be.
Beautifully worded, Rudy. Your bond with Randy was very, very tight. You actually joined the Aussie band when Randy was there, right?
Well, he recommended me. They were looking for a bass player and they needed somebody in a hurry, and you had to meet some requirements. Basically, not being a bad influence on Ozzy. That was number one requirement, which was pretty easy. I mean, you know, who so I mean, I knew how tough it was, and I knew that I had to like keep my my focus together on the goal of making it. Also, I had found a spiritual center by the time that all this had transpired. Quiet Riot. I joined Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot breaks up because Randy joins Ozzy. Then I was just looking for a new bass player. They already had Tommy Aldrich replacing Lee Kerslake,
Yep.
and Randy steps in and says, "Listen, I know we have limited time. We got like 10 days to hit the road. I know this guy. He can do this. And that's basically how I got the gig. Of course, I had to know, learn the songs immediately. Because remember, when I auditioned, I didn't even have a copy of that record. I heard it once. Randy brought it over during a break. He brought an acetate during a break from Ozzy. He came home. He came over to my place and says, "Yeah, check this out." And I heard it that once, and I'm looking at the guy. I'm going, "Is this the same guy that I play with in Quiet Riot? This is amazing stuff." Not just the perform. I knew he could play, but it's the writing, the imagination. I mean,
Yeah.
there was bits and pieces in there that came from songs that we were working out with Quiet Riot. Like let's say Crazy Train, the verses, very very major, very poppy, and then it goes into a darker, the relative minor of it. Uh, Things like that kept popping up during Noble movies. That was like something that we would jam on with Quiet Riot, kind of like an old rock and roll, straight ahead riffing and things like that. But everything, the vision of that record, was just magnificent. The majesty of Mr. Crowley, and then listening to his solo at the end, it was just like, wow, this is incredible. But I just heard it once. He took the acetate away and went home. So when it came time to audition, it was like, oh no. Let's see what song. Okay, these two songs. Okay. So Randy was kind enough to come over and came over because he was going to pick me up to take me to auditions anyway. But he came by and spent like 10, 15 minutes giving me the breakdown of how the songs went. And I had to retain that information on my way to audition and play it live. Play it live first, with Tommy and Randy, and then Ozzy jumped on stage, and we did it together, and that was basically my audition for that.
Well, Rudy, it did so well. You actually appeared on two of Ozzy's albums, both live albums, 82, Speak of the Devil, and 87, the Randy Rhoads tribute as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Following those two studio albums, you rejoined Quiet Riot, potentially at its commercial peak, 83, Mental Health, and then the following year, Condition Critical. What was it like rejoining Quiet Riot at that point and reaching success?
Yeah. Yeah, it all stemmed me rejoining Quiet Riot from losing Randy,
Yeah.
during the plane crash. Uh,
Yeah.
it just no nobody has been the same ever after that happened, and we knew we had to keep Ozzy occupied touring instead of going home. He most likely he would drink himself to death. He would have not come back from that. So it was more like, okay, let's keep him occupied. Let's keep him out there touring. And so, here I am getting up on stage every night. And there's, you couldn't escape it, even if you wanted to escape it. The fact that the audience was there, not only to listen to the music, but to celebrate the memory of Randy. And they would bring banners and posters, God bless Randy and all that. So there was like, even if you wanted to just those 90 minutes, forget about the reality of Randy not being there, you just you can escape it, even if you wanted to, So I lost the joy of playing. I really lost the joy of playing music, and it was just more of getting up on stage and surviving the those 90 minutes, that whole show, and then doing it again the next day. So I get a phone call from Kevin DeBro saying, hey, you want to come in the studio? We're working on a possible record here, and we're going to record Thunderbird, and if you want to play on it. I used to play with Kevin and his band DeBro between Quiet Riot and Ozzy.
Yeah.
And Thunderbird was one of the songs that we used to play, and that's my bass line, what you hear on the record. And as a matter of fact, so I record Thunderbird, and there was like 2 or 3 hours left in the session because we cut it really fast. So they asked me, the producer and the guys being Frankie Banali, Kevin DuBrow, and Carlos, and I had been playing with Frankie Banali for 10 years
Wow.
from 72, and we recorded that in 82. And we have been in bands together, lived together, toured together, and all that. So there was a strong bond there, you know. And so by the time that I left the session, I had recorded Slick Black Cadillac and two
Classic.
or three other songs that wound up on the album. Yeah, because Slick Black Cadillac was the only song left over from the Randy Rhoads Quiet Riot era. Kevin wrote that one. And so so here I am again, you know, playing with Kevin, who I played with in Quiet Riot, and DuBrow, lived with him right up until the time I joined Ozzy and all of that. So I'm playing with Frankie Banali. Like I mentioned, I've been playing with him for 10 years prior to recording Metal Health, the album. And so here I am, happy again. Oh my God. What great joy to like be with my Quiet Riot family back. And that was the determining factor of why I joined or rejoined Quiet Riot, even though it could have been named anything else, you know. And and getting that joy of playing again because I completely had lost it with you know right after Randy passed away. Yeah. So that same week, within a 7 to 10 day period, I recorded half of my contribution for Metal Health, and then once I joined the band, I came in and recorded the rest.
Wow.
There I played on the whole record except for 2 songs as credited on the back of the record. Chuck Wright played on "Don't Wanna Let You Go" and Metal Health, the song,
Okay.
before I did those sessions, you know. And so I recorded Mental Health, those, you know, the first session, and Speak of the Devil back to back
Wow.
within about 5 days from each other. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Mate, you've gone from strength to strength quite right. You know, they were massive around that 83, 84 period and probably really kick-started the hair metal phase in the LA scene. You've recorded with Ozzy on a couple of live albums, but then another huge album come out in 89. At this point, you joined Whitesnake for the Slip of the Tongue album. What was it like working with David Coverdale?
Actually, I joined the band in '87. I was asked, Tommy Aldrich and I were asked to join the band in '85.
Yep.
Uh, Whitesnake was the support band for Quiet Riot in '84, so I become very familiar, you know, hanging out with Coverdale and the other guys in the band, Cozy Powell and John Sykes and Neil Murray and so on. And so they were going to put a different band right after the '85, the '84 tour going into '85, because you know we had different touring schedules after we our tours ended together, you know, and we kept going, and Whitesnake kept going, headlining, going out there, especially to Europe, because Whitesnake was really huge everywhere else in the world except the United States
Yeah.
when they opened up for Quiet Riot in 1984. So once they left the States, they were back to headlining on their
Yeah.
own, you know. And so in '85, they asked Tommy and me to join the band, and I declined because there was, you know, let's put it this way, you know, John Sykes and Coverdale was a great songwriting team, but just did not get along personally. And I witnessed that. I saw that, what was going on, the conflict. And I'm going, I'm not gonna leave Quiet Riot and join another conflicting, you know, situation. So I declined, and then Tommy Aldrich declined too. Fast forward 2 years later, that
You're in.
'87 record was recorded.
Yep.
Yeah, David. It took a while. David had some surgery, some sinus surgery, and all that, and before he sang the songs, and you know, before he recorded his vocals, and So a couple of years later, he puts a new band together, Coverdale, and first guy that joined the band was Vandenberg,
Yep.
who we in Quiet Riot we did some shows together, so I knew him a little bit, and of course Vivian Campbell and Tommy Aldrich, we were still playing together at the time. So we got a call just to do the Still the Night video. It was not officially a band at that moment. It was just more like a casting call, or basically covered David's wish list of who he wanted in the band. So we got a call from John Coladner, Tommy and I. He was living with me, my family, and while we were trying to put a band together, and so we go down there and get together with Adrian and Vivian, and there was great chemistry, of course, David, and so within a couple of days, everybody decided, yeah, we want to do this. Yeah, definitely, we want to do this, and we had no idea what that meant, except that we liked each other, and we liked the incredible musicianship that everybody brought to the band, and then it just took off organically from there and became what it became. That was in '87. So in '87, we promoted the '87 record. In '88, we did the same thing. Then by '88, late '88, we took a break to start pre-production for Slip of the Tongue. Adrian Vandenberg gets injured as we are entering the studio to record the rhythm section, and we had to wait a few weeks to finalize who was going to be the new guitar player, who was also going to record the album, and that was Steve Vai.
Steve Vai. Yep.
So that's basically, the whole Slip of the Tongue, the making of Slip of the Tongue was pretty intense because there was a lot of uncertainties going on, not knowing if are we going to be able to finish this on time for a Christmas release, the important Christmas release, and that all of the record labels are counting on that's where most records get sold, Christmas.
Yeah,
or used to be. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that. I don't know what the trend is these days. I mean, with streaming so big, but the vinyl resurgence and even the CD and tape resurgence is happening. So it'd be interesting to see where the majority of sales still happen outside of streaming.
But there's so much streaming that seems to be it's the logical progression. People want things on demand, and it was just that technology did not allow us to have on demand. Now technology does, and everybody, I mean, my mom moved in with us, so she wasn't very technological savvy before that. And then once she moved in with us, we turned into the world of apps and, choosing like your own network instead of like going through a provider that the only thing you watch is live TV. And then all of a sudden she just binges on her soaps. She watches soaps constantly. That's all she watches, 24/7. She'll be up at 3, like I'm leaving for the airport at 3 a.m. to catch the first flight out. She's still up watching soaps.
Well, Mum, if you're watching this,
it's crazy.
Spend some time with Rudy on the way to the airport, not on those apps. So anyway, Quiet Riot, Ozzy, Whitesnake in '89. It gets bigger. You also played with Ronnie James Dio, is that right?
Yes, I did. What an experience, By the time that I joined Ronnie's band in 2004, I thought, I have experienced everything. And then he just took it to a whole new level of integrity. That I'm talking about Randy Rhoads level of integrity.
Yeah.
And musical integrity, human integrity, and what an experience that was. I learned so much from him. Not only learn, but also enjoy it, because sometimes you you have certain virtues internalized, but if you're not resonating with other people who have the same as you do,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
missing the human experience about that, you know. And I could have that with Ronnie every day. Yeah.
Mate, an amazing vocalist. And it's really interesting to
Oh
see
wow. And
that you've learned so much from Ronnie. Well, what's your fondest memory of playing with Ronnie?
I'm sorry,
What's your fondest memory?
what was the question again? Oh, fondest memory of Ronnie. Ah, boy. With Ronnie, you got the whole package because, of course, being the ultimate performer. And it wasn't really that he was perceived because to perform to me, it means like to act. And Ronnie was the same individual on stage and off stage. Very deep, very caring, very the maximum level of integrity. And it all stopped with him. By that I mean that he would go on stage, and if for some reason, whatever it was, he did not feel like he was up to his level in his mind of what Ronnie James Dio should be as a singer, as a performer, he would really take it hard on himself, you know, and which means that he wasn't acting, he was being, and he did not feel like he was being his best for whatever reason. We're traveling, hey, we were rehearsing with Ronnie up until the day that he got diagnosed with stomach cancer. We were rehearsing with him, and he was singing. Okay, this is what happened. This is 2009. Yeah, 2009. And it's November, like around this time, we were getting ready to leave on another Dio winter tour that we used to do because once he started playing with Heaven and Hell, that took up most of his schedule. But at the end of the year, for the Dio fans, he would always tour with the band. We would go to Scandinavia, Europe, England, and do shows. And we were just getting to ready. We were about to leave the next day, and this is on the 16th that he got diagnosed. They took him to emergency, and then emergency said, "You better see an oncologist." So once he saw the oncologist, it was determined that he had stomach cancer, and that will be November 16th. And 6 months later, he passed away. We just lost Frankie Benali in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to watch loved ones suffer not only from the cancer but also from the treatment.
Mm.
Chemo
Yeah.
is devastating. And Frankie was taking chemo, and he was taking alternative I don't know, solutions, medicine, whatever you want to call it, because they're not really laboratory created, and it's just sometimes certain things are going to work. So sometimes you get a little bit better, you get a little bit of hope. But cancer is a thief. It's a thief. It steals away everything.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a cruel thief, because if it's treated with chemo, you get hope. You get like that moment that it might be, in remission, and then comes in and it's just
Yeah.
takes you away quickly.
Yeah.
That's what happened with Ronnie. That's what happened with Frankie Benelli.
Mate, such tragedies and beautiful people as well. It always happens to the good guys, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. The best. The greatest. Yeah.
On a more positive note, one of our friends at the Rock House is Martin Motnick, who is currently playing in the band, except in 2008 he released a solo album called Bass Invaders. You were on that album. How did Martin find you?
Yes, you know what?
What led you?
I played in so many records like that, and especially during COVID, I was playing on just 1 or 2 records a week during COVID because everybody was like, so it's like, to be honest with you, I have to listen to it again to say, oh, it's that song. because I must have done about 50, at least 50 different artists that I played on. And that's not even including the what became popular, those YouTube little mashups that you have, like us playing in, you can, it's like little boxes and we're playing the song remotely, and we were doing mostly covers, for that. So I must have done altogether about 60 or 70 pieces.
Wow.
So yeah, so now by now it's a blur.
Well, it is a beautiful album, and your contribution to Martin's album is fantastic as well. You've played with some other who's who in the world of rock. Tim Ripper Owens. You've played with Tim?
Yes, we done a couple of projects. We had a band that was exclusively for touring in Russia years ago.
Yeah.
Called Project Rock, and we did about 3 or 4 tours. I mean, what I'm talking about, from Kamchatka all the way to, St. Petersburg, let's say, just, geographically, and from one end of the country to the other, Siberia, places like that. Siberia is not too bad. It reminds me of the Midwest in the United States. Cleveland. You pull up in the train station, you look out and you go, oh, it looks like Cleveland. Which I believe I've been to Australia, so Perth would be like Cleveland, basically.
We won't go there.
Which is not bad, because there is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland. As a matter of fact, Cleveland is actually has the honor to be called the rock and roll capital of the world, because there was a DJ there that promoted rock and roll from the very early on, and they used to use Cleveland as a test market.
Wow.
Like if it was a hit in Cleveland, they could release that all over the country. So that's why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there. Yeah.
So, there you go. Hopefully I'll see your name there one day, then, Rudy. Jeff Tate.
No.
Let's talk about Jeff before we talk about your nomination to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Jeff Tate. It's very well publicized that he left Queensryche, but he started his own band, and you were in that band.
Yes,
how was working with Jeff?
Actually, he was great. Great singer, great memories. Yeah, it was a bus full of like wonderful musicians, wonderful people. Seth Jordan. Two things that I really got. Aside from the whole experience was great, but the experience of playing with my brother, touring with him for the very first time ever, that was very special.
Yeah.
Which is one of my initial motivations for joining, Jeff on that tour. And also Sass Jordan. Sass, I don't know if are you familiar with her? She's one of a Canadian artist, and she's just amazing talent and an amazing human being. So that bond, that friendship, was really, really one of the best major takeaways from being involved in that.
Yeah, nice. I'm going to throw a curveball at you now. I interviewed Osford, who's a bit of a guitar icon down here in Australia, and I asked him for his top 5 albums of all time. Rudy, I'm going to ask you, what are your top 5 albums of all time that is your
Ooh.
go-to listening?
Wow.
Yeah, throwing it out there.
Wow. That's pretty tough. Oh boy, let's say, oh, wow, 5 albums by influence. Okay, wow. Yeah, as there's certain music that is played around the house that if it doesn't have a particular bass player in a certain style that I can draw something from that would challenge me, I don't pay attention to it. So
Yeah,
everything that I'm going to mention has bass players that knock me out, that make me like, what? What is that? So it's not necessarily choices in the pop realm as much as it is in I want to get something out of
yeah,
this. When I listen to music, when it is my choice to listen to a song, not something that's being played because I happen to go into a store and there it is, or my wife is listening to some music and while she's working out. I'm talking about me in control. This is what I want to listen to. It would be, let's say, musicians like, let's say, Tim Bogart with the Vanilla Fudge. Really, that was who I would say as an album that I was hearing something, a different perception of what you can do with melody. The songs were actually, most of the songs were covers of hits from other artists, but they played it in such an original way that it was basically, it's almost like looking, if Dali would have looked at the Mona Lisa and say, you know what, I'm going to do my own interpretation of the Mona Lisa, it would still be a masterpiece,
yeah,
even though it is an interpretation, you know. And so that's how, artists, like the Fudge, they would do their own interpretations, and just to hear Tim Bogart interpret what he thought, his originality, his original approach to music, that was like going to school. The same way I grew up in Miami, so Jacko was the hot local guy. And I thought there's gotta be 1,000 guys like this guy here. But no, of course, we know that. We know better now. So I grew up listening to him, watching him perform in clubs within. Okay.
Rudy, welcome back. Sorry for our technical issues there, but we were talking about your top 5 albums. You mentioned 2. Let's round out the next 3 for the top 5.
Yeah, the next 3 would be, let's say, Close to the Edge. It's a magnificent record. You got side 1, Close to the Edge, the whole piece, and then you got the other 2 songs in the back, and it's just, I think it's just, it fulfilled all my expectations. I saw that tour live,
Wow.
and Alan White had replaced Bill Bruford by then, but I believe that's Bill Bruford's last record with Yes. And at that time, in that incarnation of the band, and it was phenomenal. Of course, Chris Squire was on fire on that, as he always is. And then I would say, um, Return to Forever. As much as Jacko influenced me, so did Stanley Clarke. Magnificent compositions, and it almost like very melodic fusion. There were song structure, which I really appreciated that, and beautiful improvisations in between. It was to me, it was a total masterpiece. Any of the early Return to Forever, even the first record, but I like it much better after Ollie Miola joined the band on the second record. And then I would say Tommy, the rock opera. I mean, it just took songwriting of the Who. First of all, you got John Entwistle, then you have the masterful songwriting and everybody's contribution, whether it's Keith Moon's drumming or Daltrey singing, Pete Townsend, what a consummate composer, visionary he is, and it's just masterful. So these are songs that shape me, not only my bass playing, but the musical integrity and how to look at music as an art form rather than just a disposable pop song.
Mate, it's a beautiful top 5. I know your time is limited, so I've only got one more question left. You recently rejoined Quiet Riot, and by all accounts from the press in America, you've been quoted as saying, "I've come back home." What's next for you?
Yeah,
Quiet Riot.
My next Quiet Riot show. This is that's what's next for me. Yeah, I am just I'm blessed to be back in the band, thanks to Frankie Benelli's asking me to return. And not only does it feel like home, but it feels like I've never left, because no matter where I went, even with Ozzy, because I was already in Quiet Riot before I joined Ozzy, of course with Randy. And and if you take a look at early Ozzy when Randy and I were in the band, 1981, before they gave us the medieval stage outfits.
Yeah,
it looked pretty much looked like two guys from Quiet Riot at each end, and then one guy from Black Sabbath, which is pretty much what it was, So wherever we went, we took a bit of Quiet Riot with us. Randy's first tour with us, he was still wearing the same polka dotted vest that he did in Quiet Riot. He played the polka dotted guitar. So it was like a continuation. So I always felt that no matter where I went, I took a little bit of Quiet Riot with me. Sometimes a lot, sometimes just a little bit. Yeah. So it's great to be back where it all started for me. Yeah.
Are there any surprises for us, mate? Are you in the midst of recording or planning on releasing another record?
Yes, all of the above, and all in good time. Right now, we're just concentrating on the shows. We have the 40th anniversary of Mental Health coming up next year. Wow. And then after that, it will be the 40th anniversary of Condition Critical, both, multi-platinum records. And so we're going to be touring on that. And meanwhile, looking forward to being creative, with some new material.
Mate, 40 years, it just seems like yesterday. Where's that time?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does, because it's always now. So yes, it is.
Yeah. Rudy, I know your time is very limited. We'll leave it at there. Really excited about any upcoming release from Quiet Riot, but thank you for your time today. On behalf of the Rock House, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your show, Jack. Thank you. God bless.
Thanks so much. Take care, mate.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.